Hey and welcome back to my channel. I've taken my foot off the gas a little bit on YouTube recently, but I've spent a fair bit of time working on my own finances, but I'm going to be sure to be putting out weekly content going forward. So make sure you hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so that you don't miss any future videos. I've been thinking a lot now about how I used to manage my money, which, as you might have guessed, wasn't great. Today I want to walk you through 5 financial mistakes that I made in my 20s that hopefully you can avoid them, or if you're already doing them, you can change them. Although these mistakes relate to me in my 20s, they apply to people of all ages and certainly still would apply to me if I hadn't started my own financial freedom journey. So let's get straight into it. The first mistake that I made may be the most controversial change that we made in our household finances, and that is financing cars. Up until the beginning of 2020, my fiance and I used to lease cars because we convinced ourselves it was the best option. Not just because you get a nicer car, but we convinced ourselves that financially it was a better choice than buying a second-hand car because, car repairs and stuff. Clearly, like many people, we rationalised buying a new car that we couldn't afford on finance so that we could have a nice car. Obviously, we were not better off financially as a result. And this is a trap that so many people fall into. I think for most people, this view originally stemmed from keeping up with the Joneses, yet later evolved into the same sort of thinking that we had, that actually we were better off having a brand new car. Well played, car salesman. Well played. The truth is, car finance companies and big dealerships are there for one reason and one reason only: to make a profit. Shocking. I know. We weren't even big car people, yet we were forking out nearly £300 a month for the privilege of having a new car. £3,600 per year that we could be putting to better use. Whether it was putting money aside to upgrade a car in cash, which we now do, or moving money towards holidays or other fun stuff that we could be doing. For us, there were 2 issues that we came across. Firstly, we needed to get out of our lease. Now luckily, our term was coming to an end, but we still need to fork out money to ensure the car was in the required condition to hand it back. If you have a leased car and you want to end the term early, the chances are you're going to come across some penalties before you can hand the car back. Then, the most obvious issue is having enough money to buy a car outright. And that's going to depend largely on whether you have any savings already. You must have an emergency fund in place and ideally be debt-free before you get to this point. But if getting out of car finance means that you're one step closer to becoming debt-free, then just get it done. Even if you need to buy a car that's just worth £1,000 to start with. The money that you were spending on car payments to finance companies can now be directed towards upgrading your car as soon as you can. Getting out of the cycle of car financing feels like we are free from shackles, and I urge you to consider doing the same thing. If you're young and you're thinking about financing a car because you think you're going to look cool to your friends or probably the opposite sex, I can assure you, you don't. Most people buy nice cars to impress people at a red light that they're never going to see again. The truth is, you're never going to win with money with a mindset like this. The second financial mistake that I made in my 20s was not tracking my expenses or budgeting. Now, budgeting always seemed like such a restrictive word that meant I just couldn't enjoy life. I thought of it as a financial equivalent of a crash diet. It means I'm going to go without, and they never really work. Ironically, now that I do budget, I spend more on myself and I have more fun money than I ever had before. Why, you ask? Because I'm now intentional with my money. Being intentional with money means deciding what's important to you and allocating money towards that. It means lowering your outgoings as much as you can, but ensuring that you cover all of life's necessities. It means that you know exactly how much money you're spending, how much you're saving, and how much you have to invest. Most importantly though, it means knowing why you are doing all of these things. And by doing this, you aren't wandering through life getting paid and then trying your best to get to the end of the month without getting to zero, or even worse, getting into your overdraft. So I use and recommend the zero-based budgeting system. This means that you ensure that before you spend any money at the beginning of any month, you tell every single penny of your income where it's going to go, ensuring that the final balance is 0. This forces you to be intentional and literally know exactly where all your money is going because you told it where to go. Budgeting doesn't require much. You can even do a budget on the back of an envelope, but I would recommend using a spreadsheet. So I like Microsoft Excel or Google Sheets because I can access them anywhere from my phone to my laptop. Watch this space as I'll be releasing the spreadsheet that I created for my own finances very soon for you to use. If you want to get a bit more information about how I budget, check out the video above. So next is the scarcity mindset that I used to have. So in my 20s, and truthfully, to a certain extent, even still at age 32, I have a scarcity mindset when it comes to money. This was because when growing up, my parents didn't have a lot of money. Now, don't get me wrong, we weren't poor, but I certainly didn't have what any of my friends had. Now, growing up in South Africa meant that I saw firsthand actual abject poverty. And as I grew up and moved to the UK, this did stick with me. It kept me in the mindset that there's a certain amount of money in the world and that people with a lot of it were actually stopping people with hardly any, or in some cases, no money from getting it. Not until I started to learn more about money and a bit about economics did I begin to understand that money is infinite. To use a food analogy, it isn't like slices of pizza that are being shared. There are actually infinite pizzas, and absolutely anybody can bake their own pizzas. As flawed as many people think capitalism is, it at least allows absolutely anybody to make money by adding value to other people, whether that's in your 9-to-5 job or your own business or side hustle. For me, along with this mindset came a mental cap to my income, a glass ceiling that I just couldn't earn above. I mean, completely invisible to others, but very real to me. Whatever I earned at a particular point in my 20s felt like, that's what I deserved, and I couldn't increase it. I accepted that money was just something I would never have, and that friends and family that had money were obviously doing something that I just wasn't capable of. Because they earned more, they must have something different in their DNA, which obviously wasn't true. Now, I'm not one to believe in woo-woo, but when it comes to the scarcity mindset, convincing yourself that there's no limit to what you can earn is actually the first step to making more money. You need to believe that you can and you will do it. If you want to go deeper into the subject, and I recommend that you do, there's a good book that explains this in great depth called The Scarcity Mindset, Why Having Too Little Means So Much, and I'll link that in the description box below. So the next mistake that I made was a direct result of the previous mistake, and I was, to put it simply, a hater. A hater towards people with money, rich people. I obviously didn't actually hate them, but I looked at them as different, privileged even, because it felt like it was just something that I couldn't attain. I thought of people who had money as almost evil. When you have a mindset like this, you're preventing yourself from becoming those rich people. You will make excuses not to make more money, and you will most certainly blame other people for you not having any. Truthfully, I had a victim mindset. The only thing that broke me out of this thought cycle was knowledge. I read as much as I could about personal finance and absorbed as much content as I could on YouTube and blogs. Now, this mindset isn't exclusive to people in their 20s. I talk to people now on almost a daily basis that will blame everybody else for their financial position but themselves. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that people don't end up in dire financial situations as a result of circumstances that aren't in their control, because that's obviously not the case. But what I think everyone should and must do is be in the mindset of how to break out of that situation. This, in my opinion, can only be done with good information. If this mindset resonates with you, I would recommend starting with 2 books. The Richest Man in Babylon by George S. Clason and The Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey. These books kick-started my passion for personal finance, and I think they could do the same for you. And finally, a mistake that I've already just touched on is not reading or actively learning about money and personal finances. I believe this is a systematic problem. We don't get taught about things like this at school. We don't get taught about personal finances, and we certainly don't get taught about the stuff that we should be doing, like investing. We don't get taught what rich people do. This is something that we need to figure out on our own, which unfortunately most people don't. Reading and learning about money was a transformative process for me, and it opened up my mind to a world of possibilities. A good example of this was prior to absorbing this information, I would have told you that investing in the stock market was just pure gambling, and that people who did it may as well just be putting their money onto the roulette table. I now spend a lot of my time explaining to people what index funds are and why investing in them is something that they need to be doing to improve their future situation. The reason why this point isn't titled Not Investing or any other points is because reading and learning about money was actually the catalyst for me getting to invest in the first place. You need to start with knowledge. I've already made a video about the books that so far have been the most influential in my financial life, so I'll link that video above and in the description box below, so go and check them out once you've liked this video. And that's it. That is the 5 mistakes from my 20s that if I could turn back the clock now, I would change in a heartbeat. Thank you so much for watching, I really appreciate it. If you want to help support the channel, you can do so by subscribing. Let me know what financial mistakes that you have made and learned from in the past in the comments section below, because you never know, you might just help somebody who's in the same position as you were.